Hey guys, it's Jamie.
And I'm Amanda.
And we're from Siouxland Libraries, and today we are at the Great Plains Zoo.
Right, and this is our first stop on our behind-the-scenes tour of Sioux Falls,
where we're going to take you places that you love to go and help you see things you've never seen before.
I say we start with the giraffes.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's go.
Bye.
Jamie, this way.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Come on. All right, so we're in front of the giraffes, which is one of my favorite animals they have here at the zoo. This is Emily. She's an education specialist here, and she's going to tell us a little bit about them. So, Emily, I'm really wondering, why are their tongues so long?
So giraffes have adapted over time to just be the taller animal that reaches all of the leaves at the tops of the trees that the other animals can't get. So their tongues are long as well to help them pull those leaves off of those trees. And their tongues are about 18 to 21 inches long. So they are pretty good length, and they go with their nice long neck.
Yeah, that's super long. So I've noticed there's kind of a weird color, like it looks like purplish, and I also read that their food source in the wild is kind of sharp or dangerous a little bit.
Their tongues are going to be purple, a purplish, dark, sometimes black color, and that helps them keep their tongues from getting sunburnt, actually. So since they don't eat with their hands in the wild, their tongues are always out of their mouths constantly all day long, pulling those leaves off of those trees. So they have to be that dark color so that they don't get burnt while they're out of their mouths in the sun.
Wow.
The trees that they eat from in the wild are usually acacia trees, and acacia trees have really long thorns on them. So their tongues are extra thick and tough, so that way they can pull those leaves off of those trees without having the thorns bother their tongues.
Yeah, so you mentioned their mouth, like I can see, I think you said her name is Solstice?
Yes,
is
her
that
name
right?
is Solstice.
Yeah, she's super active back there with her mouth, and is that something that they're always doing?
They do. So in the wild, giraffes are going to eat somewhat all day long. They graze just constantly. So think of it similar to someone that chews on their fingernails. They have an oral fixation. They need to be doing something with their mouths pretty much all the time. So here at the zoo, since they eat more meals, they do graze all the time to an extent, but they eat more meals than they would in the wild. So they get their food at periods of time. So because of that, they're not constantly doing things with their mouths as much as they would in the wild. So they still feel like they need to be playing with things with their mouth. So they lick the poles and all kinds of things like that just to keep their mouths nice and busy.
So they're in Sioux Falls. How did they get here? They're so tall. Like, did they walk here? How do you do it?
So transportation definitely changes from animal to animal. When we are working on transporting an animal from one zoo to another or from wherever they're coming from, there is a lot of training involved. We want them to be comfortable in that process. So a lot of times, whatever they're being transported in will be introduced to them significantly ahead of time, so that way it's not something that they're uncomfortable with. And with giraffes, obviously size is a big deal. There's only a certain number of vehicles in the United States that can transport a giraffe around the country, and you have to take things into consideration like overpasses because they can't go under things that are going to be too tall for them. So it's definitely pretty crazy.
That is really cool. Well, I absolutely loved hanging out with the giraffes. Can you just tell us their names?
Yeah, so right here, our darker one, this is our male. His name is Chioki. Over here to his side, we have Solstice. She's our female. And then we have an additional female that's on the other side of those fences, and her name is Olivia D.
Super cool. Well, we're going to go and hit our next animal spot. Thank you so much for telling us about these giraffes. They're so beautiful, and I've just learned so much.
So we're here at the Rhinos now with Emily, and we just got a couple questions that we want to ask because we love rhinos and we want to know a little bit more about them. So right off the bat, they've got these big horns. Like, Emily, what are those made out of?
So their horns are actually made out of keratin, which is the same stuff that makes up our fingernails and our hair. So it's not bone, it's not ivory, it's basically just very, very compressed keratin. So if you see a rhino horn up close, they're actually a little bit fuzzy due to the fact that it's the same stuff as our hair and our fingernails.
Very cool. So is that kind of like an elephant tusk too? Are they made similar or are they different?
Not. So elephant tusks are going to be made out of ivory, so different substance.
Interesting. Very cool. So for our rhinos, did they have any natural like predators?
Rhinos do not have any natural predators, at least as adults. When they are babies, things like big cats and hyenas can come after the young, but once they are of good size, the only predators to rhinos are going to be people.
Interesting. So are rhinos endangered then?
Absolutely. So black rhinos, like what we have here, are going to be one of the critically endangered rhino species. All species of rhino are endangered to some extent,
Okay.
and then 3 of those subspecies are going to be critically endangered. So for sure.
We talked a little bit about like what their horn feels like. What does their skin feel like?
Their skin is kind of a rough, leathery texture. So if you picture leather but without the smooth coating on the top, then that's going to be pretty similar to what a rhino feels like. The different subspecies of rhinos do actually have somewhat different skin, so they do feel a little bit different depending on the type of rhino.
Very cool. What's a group of rhinos called?
A group of rhinos is called a crash. However,
So good.
rhinos are generally solitary animals, so they usually prefer to be by themselves like we have them set up here.
So not a lot of crashes?
Not a lot of crashes, no.
That's too bad. Let's see, what do they like to eat?
Rhinos are herbivores, which
Okay.
means that they're going to eat strictly plants. Here we give them a variety of different things, and we do change up their diet on a regular basis. We give them different fruits and vegetables depending on the day, depending on what we have in stock. I know the other day we had our enrichment day here, and they got cantaloupes, which they really liked. They just got a big whole cantaloupe that
Yum.
they got to just smoosh right in their mouths, which was pretty neat. But
they
lots
eat
of
the
different fruits and
rind?
vegetables. They did. Yep, they ate the whole thing,
Nice.
all in one.
Very cool. So what's your favorite factor? What do you love most about rhinos? Something that maybe a lot of us aren't familiar with or know about.
Rhinos really love mud. That's probably kind of basic, but rhinos use mud for lots of different things. They
Okay.
use it for bug spray, for to cool them down, for a lotion, and to keep their skin nice. So rhinos here, we provide mud for them. We even give them mud baths all year round throughout the winter. So even when they don't have mud out in their habitat, they still get mud all the time to keep their skin nice.
So are rhinos fast or are
Rhinos
they slow?
are fast. They can run anywhere from 30 to 35 miles per hour, so they're pretty good speed. And they are a charge first, think later kind of animal because they don't see very well.
Okay.
So if something is bothering them, they're gonna run at it full force. That's their best defense.
So definitely keep your distance.
Yes, I would recommend keeping your distance. If you ever see a rhino outside, definitely keep your distance.
Good thing you guys have these like fences and stuff.
Yes, ours aren't going anywhere for sure.
Perfect. Thank you so much for talking to us about the rhinos and helping us learn a little bit more about them here at the zoo. We're gonna go check out one more animal before we wrap things up, so stay tuned.
So Emily, one of the things that you've talked about a little bit that I'm really curious about is the training aspect. So why do you do training with the animals? Do you do it with all animals?
Absolutely. So we do train with almost all of our animals here at the zoo, and even though it looks really cool, it does all serve a purpose. So a lot of our animals are trained to do what we call shifting, which is moving them from place to place. That helps with getting them where we need them to be. For animals like bears that are no contact, then our keepers can come out and can lay out their food and their toys and things like that. And then the bears will shift back out onto exhibit. So shifting is very important. Another thing is for medical care. So when you see our keeper out here training our bears, a lot of times they'll stand up and they'll put their paws up and they'll present their sides to the fence. Then that's all for medical purposes. So we can check their feet, make sure they don't have any abrasions or things like that going on. And when they present their side, that's usually for injections so that we can give them shots and things like that without having to do anything invasive. So
Okay.
keeps them comfortable.
So yeah, training with a lot of the animals, and you had mentioned when you were talking with Jamie that there was training with the rhinos. You can train that large of an animal as well?
Yeah, for sure. So rhinos and giraffes as well all get trained. So our rhinos, they get care for like if flies are bothering them, or we do care on their feet. Our giraffes as well get a lot of care with their hooves. So our male Chioki is trained to do hoof trims, which is super cool.
That is cool. So since I've lived in Sioux Falls, I know that this is a kind of a new space for the zoo, and I absolutely love it. And the brown bears are one of my favorite places to visit because they're so active. Like, what are some of their, do they play games? Do they have activities that they like to do?
Absolutely. For our bears, a lot of what we do is for them to forage. So when we do enrichment, we'll spread things out all across their exhibit. We'll give them things in barrels and in boxes and things that they have to dig for and get a little messy and get a little active. And they really love bones. So if you'll see, they'll throw their bones around. They want to break up those bones and get the marrow and the things that are inside of them. So they'll smash their bones and they'll throw them really high up in the air and all kinds of fun things. Keeps them nice and busy and active.
I think you've got one of the coolest jobs, and I'm pretty sure a lot of our kids at home are going to think the same thing. So how do you get to be in this position? Is it competitive?
So a lot of people think that since we do a lot of picking up poop that we might necessarily need to have a lot of training and education to do our job, but we do. So the majority of zoos require anywhere from a 2 to 4 year degree to be a keeper. So stay in school, definitely do a lot with sciences and things like that. And it is very competitive. So when you do get into the process of trying to prepare for jobs and for schools and things like that, the more experience with animals you have, the better. So interning places, here we have our junior zookeeper program, which is really great. The kids get to work as they work their way up the levels. They get to work with different animals, which is really great experience for them. But yeah, for sure.
Last question, what's the best part of your job here at the Great Plains Zoo?
So my favorite part of the job is probably going to be teaching people, whether it's from kids to adults, all ages. Everybody can learn something new when they come to the zoo. And with our education programs, we get to reach so many people. The more the people know about the animals, the more they're going to want to care about them, and the more they're going to want to work with us to help protect those animals. So love reaching a whole bunch of different people.
Cool. I can't say thank you enough to the Great Plains Zoo for having us here. Emily, you've been incredible. Everybody that we've seen has just been amazing. I highly recommend you guys come and check out the zoo. By just being here, you support conservation efforts. And Jamie and I are gonna go check out the rest of the animals. But again, thank you so much for being
Absolutely,
with us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you guys so much for watching our video. We had so much fun at the zoo. Thank you so much to our friends at the Great Plains Zoo for bringing us here and letting us learn all about the animals. We had so much fun.
Hey, let's go check out the rest of the animals that we didn't see.
I can't wait.
All right.
See you guys.